Hi, this is Paul Palmer. Welcome to another LinkedIn Live. I hope you're all having a good day. As usual, I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes for people to join because I know you get the notifications on LinkedIn when it first comes up. While I'm doing that, I'll give you a bit of background again. So as you know, this is my fourth decade. No, I've got 4 decades of experience. It's not my fourth decade, it must be the 5th one then. 40 years in pharmaceutical manufacturing and supply. I started in microbiology, on the shop floor, walking around, doing all the environmentals, cleaning the stuff when it got back, doing all the media, preparation of plates, pouring the Rodax myself, identification, validation. Validation was probably the most interesting part. Sterilisation validation. I think because of the calculations and the science that went into it, it was a bit more technically detailed. I remember doing the ones in the factory and being told about somebody not putting the safety in and nearly getting sterilised, and that really put me off. It put me off going inside, but I didn't need to, so that was good. I just put the cables in and then it just went through the system, through the process. So I didn't have to worry so much. Ethylene oxide, once I was driving over to the ethylene oxide sterilizer, because originally we did the ethylene oxide in on site, but then we decided to subcontract to Griffiths Microscience. And I remember being confused because my car told me that I had to go by a different route. So I planned to go the normal route, straight on the motorway, straight down, easy peasy. And it said, come off. So I went off. Followed my GPS, as you do. Follow the instructions. Well, I do. And going across it, cutting across the motorway, the next junction, I looked and I saw a huge traffic jam. And I thought, that's why my GPS told me to go a different way. So I always follow my GPS. But occasionally, of course, it doesn't get it right. But it's like planning for an inspection. You can plan everything you want, but they don't always do what you expect. So what do you have to do to make sure you get the best result? Well, we're going to talk about that today. How inspectors judge a deviation in the first 30 seconds. Now, it's not the first entry into the site. We'll do that another day. Before they read the full investigation. And how to make sure your reports project control, clarity and competence from the very first line. I think it's a really important skill to master, not just in quality, but in the full team, everybody that's involved in deviations, because the first impression does make a difference. It makes a massive difference to your the way that your deviations are perceived. So an inspector looks at structure, clarity. They signal whether the organisation is in control before a single finding is even read. Weak openings, well, we did this without putting any detail, or maybe there was a deviation. Well, that doesn't help anybody, does it? Or what else could it be? Maybe the let's think, what else could it be? We found a problem with, but you don't detail what the problem was, or the test result for the pH was out of spec, but you don't write the spec, or certain operator did it wrong. Well, that's not good enough. You have to be very specific, factually specific, not incomplete. So you've got to make sure you put the full details there. If it's disorganised and you say one bit first and then you change it and you cross it out and you do something else, then it's going to prompt them to look further. So what we're looking at today is focusing on what the inspectors will notice first and how to make sure that you eliminate some of the common red flags that undermine their confidence in what you're doing straight away. Because of course, when an inspector has got confidence in what you're doing, they carry on. They just move on to the next stage. I remember hosting an FDA once, and they were going in detail into one specific area of concern they had and said, well, okay, I accept that, let's move on. Now, why is that useful? Well, if you say, yes, I've accepted the problem, they're not going to dig further. Just write it up. Because digging further could lead to other issues. It could lead to a minor deviation becoming a major deviation. So do accept what they say, even if you challenge it at the closeout meeting. So what do they see first? Well, any investigation, any deviation, any incident, whatever you call it. Maybe you call it non-conformance still. That's a long way back then since I did that. So the inspector scans it first. Can you see what it is that you're talking about? Have you got the identification right? You've got a title, what the description is. When and where did it happen? Who was involved? What product was involved? Look at the scope, the batch, the equipment, systems. Maybe it was HPLC. Whatever it was, get your scope in there. And you don't have to you don't have to break them down into these particular categories, but it does help. What did we do straight away? What was our immediate response? Did we stop it and fix it? And then, did we actually assess the impact? What was the impact straight off? Was there one? Did we fix it? Did we have to stop? The initial evaluation of product quality and patient safety risk, right from the start, if you're talking about it at the beginning, they'll appreciate that. But of course, the full report needs to be factual. It needs to have the details, well organised, and look as if you're actually in control of it, not just writing something in for the sake of it, just because you need to. The title itself sets the tone. Now, I've seen some terrible titles. And of course, you look at the deviation log, and you look down the titles. Well, if it's not clear, as an inspector, as an auditor, what the actual event was, if the title doesn't show you that, then you're going to choose more examples. You don't want something vague. If it's an SOP that's not followed, SOP 34 for the testing of paracetamol was not followed, is very specific, and it means that they know what you're talking about. They're not going to open more deviations and think, well, I don't know what that one's about and that one's about, so I'm going to look at all these 10. Instead, really, what you want them to look at is maybe 1 or 2 and get confidence. Use neutral language. Don't make a conclusion before you even start. Never be defensive or judgmental. Oh, it was their fault. No. This happened. This were the circumstances. This is when it happened. This is what the impact is. And this is what we did about it. But the title is that introduction. It puts them in a place of ease or a place of concern right from the outset. Now the next thing to think about is it comprehensible? Can they understand what it is that actually happened? If the inspector's there and they're thinking, well, I'm just starting out and I've read the SOP, now I want to look at some of the deviations, and it doesn't make sense. The event description has to tell a clear story. They shouldn't need to have to go into more detail to try and work out what you're talking about. What's the context? Was it on the shop floor? Was it in development? The development team, blah. The production operator in room 3, working on the line at station 2, on the aspirin packaging process. Make sure it's really, really clear what it is, where it was. What went wrong? Well, they found a chip tablet on the 17th of February at 10:03. Just one. And the process was running and they were manufacturing at the time. So they stopped it. Explain. Who identified it? How? When it was reported? Reported on. The machine itself might be something that's got cameras in there to detect. They found a chip tablet, they found a half tablet, they found one that was not sealed properly. And make sure you keep facts distinct. Oh, we assumed that is not a fact. The placement of the tablet on the line at the time of the discovery is a fact. The person standing there examining it is a fact. The person that assumes that it went this way when they read it 3 weeks later is not a fact. It's an assumption. So your preliminary assessment must be based on facts. Immediate control. So you want to make sure that you contain an activity. If you know something's going wrong, put a bracket around it. Control it. I remember when I used to be in manufacturing, when I used to go around to look at the, well, was it the QC or was it macro? I think it was QC. And I got them to segregate when something went wrong. And I separated that part off from the rest of the batch. Now, why did I do that? Well, for example, a sterile product manufactured on a specific line, maybe it was a 10 by 10 dressing. This is, what was it at the time? Melon, I think. It's a medical device. But it just applies the same to the medicinal products that were active, the Bactigras that was there at the time. So they got to a point where they said, oh, we've got a failure in the in-process checks. I'm not sure what to do. I say, well, okay. Quarantine that part of the batch. You can continue manufacturing while somebody does the inspection. Statistical sample came back and said, yeah, we've got a problem. We've got a seal integrity failure. What we're going to do about it? Well, we've noticed that this one looks like this and the one where it fails looks like this. So they'll do 100% inspection, pull out the defective ones, continue with the batch, but this part of the batch got a sub-batch. So you got an A at the end of it, at the end of the batch number. You couldn't do it on the dressings, but you could do it on the cartons that they were inserted into. Made sure that the actual problem was contained and they were in a separate pallet to the rest of it in case, at a later stage, they were not released. So then we continued with after fixing the problem, with the rest of the batch separately. But they were released separate. You need to secure the affected product. What was potentially impacted, material identified, quarantined, labelled. But you need to write that up in your deviation, of course. Not just do it at the time. We secured we placed the batch in. We did this. Whatever it is that you need to do according to your SOP to segregate the failed batch, then do that. Write it down that you've actually done it. Assess the scope. Was there anything else related to this? Was it just this particular pallet? Was it this particular batch? Or does it affect another 10 batches as well? Now remember, with skip lot testing, that's the risk you take. So with skip lot testing, maybe you're testing 1 in 10. Okay, so we've tested the 10th one and it failed. What do we do now? We have to go back and test the other 9 in between since the last good one. It's not a fun job. I prefer keeping the in-process checks in real time. But of course I do understand that it saves money when you do skip lot testing. But is it worth it? If you're going to have to check back 9 batches and maybe 4 of them have already gone out. Especially with a sterile product. Keep the evidence. We've got the records. What do we do with them? Keep them on file. What about the samples? Keep them on file. Make sure the data's there so you can reconstruct the investigation that you completed. Then if somebody asks you, you can do it. How long do you want to keep them for? Minimum a year, I would say. Some people go longer. Some people go shelf life +1. But for an investigation of this nature, Most of the time I would just say 1 year and maybe take photographs and attach them to a digital file. Because of course we all use digital files now, not just paper. Well, actually that's not true, not everybody. I do still get involved in reviewing the paper ones that have been scanned. Language. So, you need to be careful how you write things, which words you use. Some phrases signal a weak investigation. Investigators recognise them straight off. And then you've got patterns that create doubt. So, for example, no impact without supporting evidence. There was no impact on the batch as we checked 100% to verify that the seal integrity failure only affected the small portion that we quarantined. Human error before any investigation. Oh, this person did it wrong, so now we had to reject it. Not. When we investigated, we did a statistical sample, we found this had happened and that it had been missed during the in-process checks. The in-process checks should have shown blah blah blah. But actually, in fact, what they showed was blah blah blah. It must have been a human error. No. Maybe the sampling methodology is wrong. Maybe the frequency is not often enough. Maybe you haven't used ISO 2859 to determine the sample size. And you've just not done it often enough. Not tested often enough. Then you've got the isolated incident. Isolated incident today that's already happened 5 times in the past is not an isolated incident. It's a trend. Be very careful using the isolated incident terminology if you haven't already checked. Because I've seen that multiple times when you've got multiple versions of the isolated incident. And that shows you it's not an isolated incident. The operator was retrained. The usual outcome from the human error. Well, if you do that as the kappa, and one operator is retrained, and you've got 50 in the team, what about the rest of them? How do you know that the rest of them don't need retraining as well? Well, you don't really. So when it's retraining, I would normally push it out to the whole team. But what would really be better is make sure you do your full root cause investigation and fix the problem at source, not just retraining. Fix the problem where it originated, which often is in a procedure or a work instruction or a form, being incorrectly formatted or incomplete. I was actually doing some training last week on the preparation, well, was it preparation or what do I call it? Writing the SOPs. So what was important about that? Well, writing SOPs needs to be structured. You think about how they go together first. Then you think about what the content should be, what's the scope and the purpose, before you even think about writing the content. Because if you don't think about the scope and the purpose before you write the content, well, you're going to find that that it's not specific, that you've got overlap with something else, and then you end up with operators being retrained again and again because they've got conflicting instructions. What's missing really matters. Requirement or expected condition. What's the specification? No defined scope of potentially affected product. Is that the best way to write it? You want to look at, can I say that this is definitely isolated? And if I can, why? Where's the evidence? No defined scope of potential. I just did that one, didn't I? No reference to supporting records or data. If you've got supporting records, make sure it's clear what they are. Make sure people know they can find them somewhere. No assessment of similar previous events. Look back in your log. It's really easy. Provided, of course, as we said earlier on, your title actually reflects the content. I used to do it all the time. But we had a hard copy file. I used to do it with paper. And that's a long time ago. How the event was directed. No explanation of how the event was detected, sorry. How did we find it? Oh, well, it just popped out the end of the process. No. Or the electronic eye kicked it out and identified the failure. Or a complaint. Somebody came back with it. You want to know how it's detected because it impacts the way that you investigate and the depth that you investigate. No rationale for decisions made during containment. Well, it's really important. As a scientist, I always think about, well, why am I making that decision? What's the rationale behind it? So when you write something down and you do make a decision, you need to make sure that you write the rationale. We did this because. We found this when. Make sure the rationale is clear. Over-explaining can be as dangerous as under-explaining. Don't say too much. Don't say more than you need to if the right amount will do. Too much background pads it out and they think, well, why are they writing all this lot when it's totally irrelevant? And they think maybe it can hide the key facts. Well, the inspector's going to look more depth anyway. Repetition. Don't say the same thing twice. It suggests you don't know what you're doing. Defensive. Or you're trying to soften the impact for them. Irrelevant technical detail. Unrelated context weakens the narrative and distracts from the actual failure. It does. But why? Well, if you take them out of context, then they're going to be thinking about something else. Yeah, they're not going to be thinking about your deviation, but then maybe they get confused. And if they're confused, what happens? Well, they'll then think, well, that didn't make sense. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. That didn't make sense. What does that mean to me? Why is it relevant? Why are they putting it in here? Do they actually understand what they're investigating? If they've done something that's unrelated or irrelevant in this deviation, well, maybe I need to look elsewhere for the more relevant information. Maybe they copied and pasted the wrong thing in. It's just going to make them look further. And then unsupported conclusions. If you don't put the evidence in there, it's going to undermine the credibility of the whole report. So, we found this because we've decided this on the basis of this information that we found, these data. So, how do you build confidence? You start with a specific title. Make sure the facts are in there, but not too much, not verbose. Describe the actual failure, the actual thing you found. Who found it, when they found it, where they found it, what the impact was. Make sure it's in chronological order. That means step 1 first, step 2 second, step 3 third. Describe the event in a clear, logical sequence. This is what happened. Tell a story. Containment. What did we do about it? Make sure that immediate actions are proportionate to the failure. Oh, we went out and recalled everything because one of the tablets fell on the floor. No. That's not appropriate level of, it's not a proportionate level of action. Evidence-linked decisions. Every decision you make based on, as a result of, when we investigated this, we found, so then we did this. Evidence-linked. Don't just say we're going to do this. Actually tell them why. What you found already. Confidence comes before the root cause. If the first page creates questions, the inspector will keep digging until the system provides answers. They're not going to want you to just drift along onto the next concern. They'll want to know the answer to the question. What is this specifically related to? And if it's not clear, they're going to want to change it. They're going to want you to tell them more about it. And of course, if your deviation's from a few years ago, how are you going to do that? If the control is visible early, the inspector's going to think the organisation looks like they're in control from the outset, not in the conclusion. The way that writing reflects the thinking usually reflects a clear investigation discipline. Vague language creates doubt before anything comes through. So don't use it. but guide, don't obstruct. A deviation report should guide the reader, not force them to interrogate the document to understand what happened. It needs to be specific. It needs to make sure that it's comprehensible, that it actually shows where the control is, what was thought about, and where they want to go next. Okay, that's it for today. It's Paul Palmer from the Academy of Pharmaceutical Excellence. I'm a pharmaceutical consultant, as you probably already know, QP. But I'm the founder of the Academy of Pharmaceutical Excellence, so if you'd like to know more, or if you're interested in some training, please do contact me. You can see linkedin.com/in/Paul R. Palmer. The easiest way to find me is just to type in the search bar Paul R. Palmer. Same for YouTube, at Paul R. Palmer. And we have other access points as well, such as the email, info@academyofpharmaceuticalexcellence.com. Or the website also has a contact form on there. So I hope to hear from you all soon. So that's it for today. Until next time.